The word worship means literally worth-ship, to accord worth, true value to something, to recognize and respect it for the true worth it has. Worship is humble and glad. Worship forgets itself in remembering God. Worship celebrates the truth as God's truth, not its own. True worship doesn't put on a show or make a fuss. True worship isn't forced, isn't half-hearted, doesn't keep looking at its watch, doesn't worry what the person in the next pew might be doing. True worship is open to God, adoring God, waiting for God, trusting God even in the dark. And, that's what we do on Sunday mornings is unique from the week is that we can be together. But the worship part of our life should not be unique to just Sundays. And so as we are the church, we worship God during the week, and then we're able and look forward to coming together as his church, just a small piece of his church together to worship him with one another. And so, as you guys go from this place, continue to have a heart posture of worship to God and at whatever you're doing and whatever your day brings. But we value and really appreciate these times that we get with each other. So can we all stand up and we're going to sing some songs. Praise God from whom all blessings flow. Praise him, all creatures here below. Praise him above ye heavenly hosts. Praise Father, Son, and Holy Ghost. Sing amen. Praise God for all that he has done. Praise him for he has overcome. The grave is beaten, love has won. Praise God our Savior, Christ the Son. Sing amen. 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 God, we praise you. God, we praise you. Sing amen. God, we praise you. God, we praise you. Amen. Please have a seat. He continues in a little later, and he says, people often quote Oscar Wilde's dictum, that a cynic knows the price of everything and the value of nothing. We live in an age of cynics, where worth means price, and price means money, and money means power. But the gospel of Jesus Christ puts worth back into the world, worth beyond price, worth beyond worldly power. For the gospel of Jesus Christ summons us to worship, to worth-ship, to lay our lives before the one true and living God, to worship him for all he's worth. Give to this great and loving God the honor, the worship, the love due to him. Celebrate the goodness, the worth, the true value of the created order as his gift, his handiwork, and allow that celebration to lift your eyes once more to God himself, to his glory and his beauty. And my prayer is for us that we would be able to do this not only here on Sundays, but during our everyday, in those moments that point back to Him. And maybe for you that is when you get up in the morning and you get to see the sunrise, or maybe it's the first smell of coffee, or whatever beauty during your day that you see. My prayer is that would point back to the Creator of beauty, and the things that we get to experience, and yet I think we gloss over and look past very quickly during our day. But what would it look like if we were able to pause in those moments and give praise back to the Creator and recognize Him in those moments? Let's continue to sing.
Early
This next song that we're going to sing is one we sung at our evening service for a while, and so we're going to introduce it to you guys. You guys know it, go ahead and sing it out.
And all the earth will shout your praise. Our hearts will cry, these bones will sing. Great are you, Lord. And all the earth will shout your praise. Our hearts will cry, these bones will sing. Great your praise, our hearts will cry, these bones will sing. Great are you, Lord. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise, we pour out our praise. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise to you only. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise. We pour out our praise. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise to you only.
God, thank you for this new day you've given us and this new morning to be together. God, I pray that we would respond to your invitation to engage in what you have for us today, and even in this moment. We'd be able to see the things that we put way too high on our important and priority lists in regard to what you care about in our lives. And so, God, I pray that you would continue to focus, keep our eyes focused on you and what you desire for each of our lives. I think sometimes we can get so wrapped up in our lives and in ourselves that we forget about others around us and the people that you want us to be being Jesus to. And so, God, I pray that you would have our eyes be open today, our hearts be open to listening and hearing what you have to say. Thank you for all the things that you are doing, even amidst all the pain, all the hurt that we experience and that people experience around this world on a daily basis. Thank you, God, that you are still at work, that your love is still being shown by your church. And I pray that we would be willing to be a part of that. Whatever that looks like, whatever the cost, be willing to do that. Thank you for loving us. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Please have a seat.
So I got to spend a little bit of time away this week, took a little vacation, hung out over in Central Oregon, and it was wonderful. We come back all refreshed and charged up. While I was there, I was thinking about a lot of different things, and one of the things I was thinking about is that regardless of where you are, it just seems like our life and our world is just going kind of crazy. And I was thinking about how that in John chapter 10, Jesus talks about the fact that he says, the thief comes only to steal, kill, and destroy. And I thought, how about that? It just looks evident in our world that there's a lot of that going on. And in the midst of that, and I don't know if you're like me, but we were away from the news quite a bit this week, didn't get to hear it. And by Wednesday, I figured out, it's kind of nice not hearing all that stuff, But in the midst of all of that that's going on, Jesus said these words, I've come that they might have life and they might have it to the full. In the midst of all of that we hear and we experience and is a part of our life, Jesus says, I have this message that I want to give people, that I can give them life to the full. As a church, we believe that's not just something we do here in Albany, but it's something that we do throughout the world. You've heard that we're sending some ladies to Africa. This morning, you get to hear from a special couple, Kevin and Debbie Nelson, who have been our missionaries. They're one of the missionaries that we support as a church. As a church body, we say, we believe in these people, and we want to see what God is going to do in and through them. And so in a different country, in a different part of the world, which you'll hear about in just a minute, they bring that same message, that message of life. And having been through this once already this morning, I can tell you that you will be challenged this morning as you see believers, followers of Christ, in a completely different part of God's kingdom, living faithfully for Him. And as you see people who are challenged with many different kinds of things than what we are challenged here with in our country, and seeing them respond and follow Jesus. So this morning, it's my prayer and my desire, and I believe the Lord's desire, that every single one of us would be challenged this morning about how we can bring the message of Jesus' life to those that we come in contact with. And an added benefit is knowing how to better love and pray and care for our missionaries that are serving the country of Ukraine. So Kevin and Debbie, if you'll make your way up here, and magically, we're going to think
magically everything will work.
Everything will work, magically.
Do you have the pre-recorded service so I don't have to say anything now? Minus 22. Ooh, is that? I guess it's the time to start.
So Ecclesiastes 3:1, 11, and 14 says, "There is a time for everything, and a season for every activity under heaven. He has made everything beautiful in its time. He has also set eternity in the human heart, yet no one can fathom what God has done from beginning to end. I know that everything God does will endure forever. Nothing can be added to it, and nothing taken from it. God does it so that people will revere him.
There's a time to say thank you. We want to give a big thank you to you guys at South Albany Community Church for being with us. We go to Ukraine, but we could not do without you. We really appreciate your prayer support, your financial support, and your cards and those little things that you send to us on Facebook and those snail mail things. Does anyone know about those things? They come to the post office every once in a while. But thank you so much for being our team here because we could not do it without you. We physically go there, but we couldn't do it without you guys.
So now, this morning, we'd like to share some of the times of things that God has been doing in Ukraine since we saw you last. So there's a time for war.
And a time for peace.
A time for aid.
And a time for protection.
A time for English.
And a time for photography and cooking.
A time for travel.
And a time for guests.
A time for planting.
A time for reaping.
A time for training.
And a time for growth.
So let's start with a time for war and a time for peace. So many people ask us, is the war still going on in Ukraine? And I wish I could tell you, no, it's not. But the reality is that, yes, the war continues. So the war started in eastern Ukraine in the Donbass region in 2014, and it continues to result in daily casualties, trauma, economic instability, and suffering from the tragedies of war. So about 14,000 people have been killed since the war started, and 3 million have fled the eastern war zone. And of those 3 million, approximately 1 million of them have left the country as refugees, and the other 2 million are internally displaced in Ukraine. So while the most poignant physical suffering takes place in eastern Ukraine, people throughout the country are affected, including in the capital city, Kiev, where we continue to live and serve. In the capital, well, in the whole country, the economic situation is really bad, and so that causes obvious problems. And then families continue to worry about whether their loved one will be drafted and sent to the war. Many of those refugees that are internally displaced, out of that 2 million, many of them are in Kiev, maybe half of them. So the city is flooded with refugees, which causes a lot of other issues as well.
So we're still waiting for peace, and this is the Ukrainian flag, and blue and yellow. And we have some blue and yellow ribbons on our back table. If you would like to commit to pray for peace in Ukraine, please take one of those as a reminder. Last time we were here, we also gave those out to pray for peace, and as just a reminder, so please take one and please continue praying for peace in Ukraine.
So during a time of war, there's also a time for aid and a time for protection. So despite the continuation of the war, we see and hear testimonies of God doing many wonderful things during these troubled times. So our Kiev Church, Faith, Hope, and Love, they minister to refugees, soldiers' families, chaplains, and others who are suffering from the results of the war. And some of you gave specifically to Wings of Generosity and Care the last time we were here and continue to do that. We just want to say thank you. If you don't know what Wings of Generosity and Care is, it was the organization that was formed when the war started to send aid, food, and other supplies to the east. And there you can see us packing some of those. So thank you for being part of that.
In 2016, I had an opportunity to go to the buffer zone to deliver 600 bags of food and gospel tracts. And we heard bombing in the distance, but there was no bombing right where we were at, so we were very thankful for God's protection on that. And one of the guys that went with me is Vlad. He is from eastern Ukraine. He's a refugee. He requires dialysis. But when the war started, dialysis was no longer offered in his city, so he had to move to Kiev. And there, they gave it free to the refugees. He and his family moved there. They met a pastor, and they got saved and baptized. Just like that. I mean, that's fast. And so anyway, he heard about Wings, so he came, started packing food bags, and then he wanted to deliver packages to his hometown. So we were able to take him with us, and so he was able to give food and the tracts to some of the people that he knew in his hometown.
So Wings of Generosity and Care continues to provide food and supplies in the East, but much less originating in Kiev now. Now, aid is available nearer to the war zone, and it's cheaper to send money there, to buy it there. There aren't the transportation costs then of the trips. So we don't do as much packing now in Kiev, just very rarely when they need something specific. But there are other types of aid which are much more needed at this time, and that's emotional and spiritual aid. And so our church has 3 different Bible studies for refugees. We continue to give food to refugees and soldiers' families who need help through our church. There's also ministries to soldiers who are in hospitals in Kiev. And so there continue to be many needs in the city. Our coworker, Dina, she works directly with the refugees. And this is a quote from her that I want to share. "We are praying for the refugees' openness to the gospel. Many of these people have lost their work, homes, families, and friends. There is a lot of bitterness and anger. We see that only Jesus can heal their hearts because there is no reasoning that will remove their deep scars. Only the hope of Christ will free them to forgive the atrocities against them."
So some of the members of our church, they minister to the wounded soldiers, as David said, and the families, and they share the gospel with them. One soldier, Roman, he was a very active, handsome young man, and now he's just an invalid in bed. And so he waits for those phone calls, and he perks up every time he hears someone talking to him and just fellowshipping with him. Also, one of the things we do is we hand out Bibles, old-fashioned Bibles that you have to look through with pages, and then also MP3 players that have the New Testament on them. And these are 2 snipers with the New Testament on them. Oh, also we have lots of chaplains come to our church and share stories. Last year on Easter, there was quite a few people who came and accepted Christ at the chaplain's ministry, and they also tell us different stories of protection and also how the soldiers are gathering to study the Bible in the mission field, or on the battlefield.
So we do praise God for his protection. We partner now with 2 churches, I think I mentioned that already, that are one is near the war zone and one is in the war zone. The word on that sign is Avdeevka, and that's where the guy in the middle, he's a young church planter with 2 of the members of his team. And in 2017, there was heavy bombing in their city, and the infrastructure of the city was destroyed. And so people were without heat and electricity during winter. It was cold and miserable. And so they set up a heating point right after it happened, where people could come and warm up and get some tea and food before they had to go again. And Alex, the guy in the middle, he was serving 2 days and nights without sleep, and he was really tired and wanted to go home that second night, or the third night, I mean. But he decided at the last minute, no, I think I'll stay yet one more night. So when he went home the next morning and came to his apartment, there were bullet holes above his bed, and his window was shattered. The neighbor below him on the first floor was killed in that attack. And so we are just really grateful that Alex wasn't there in bed that night and that God protected him in that way. Alex is really passionate for Jesus, and he works with a lot of youth. We're just really excited to be able to partner with him and what God is doing through him. So pray for him if you think of it.
In 2017, there was a supply truck that left Kyiv Thursday evening. As soon as they got out of town, the tire blew, so they had to fix the tire. But they had to unload the van first to get the tire on. Then they were on their way a little bit farther in the middle of the night, in the middle of nowhere, the second tire blew. And so it took a while for them to get the next tire. Then when they almost arrived at their final destination, not final destination, but first part of their destination, another tire blew, so they had 3 tires that blew. And they were very frustrated and way behind schedule. Well, our Kyiv team, they received a phone call, and they said at 5:45 in the morning, Friday morning, there was heavy artillery shelling on the roads that the van would have been on if it would not have been delayed. So sometimes, the bad things are actually good things, but at least we knew the whole story on this one. So it's great to see and hear God's full story in this particular story.
So even as the war continues on, there's still a time for English and a time for photography and cooking. These ministries continue to be relevant and wanted by professionals in Kiev, so we continue to reach out to people through English, photography, and cooking. And Kevin will share first.
Okay, so I with 3 other missionaries, or actually there's the older group there, or the missionaries that are still in the field. The younger group has already gone to different ministries, but I do English camps with these people. And the English camp is approximately 10 days where we invite Westerners to come and share a dorm-style room with Ukrainian students, 1 to 3 students, and they share the same room. We have activities, we have lots of fun. We also have 1 to 5 university students that are Christians that come, and they're kind of like mentors, and they mingle in with the students that are not believers yet. And sometimes the students accept Christ by the end of camp, so we're really excited to see God working through this ministry. And to give you some statistics, in 2016, 12 out of 49 Ukrainians accepted Christ. In 2017, 4 out of 44 students accepted Christ. And in 2018, 8 out of 42 students decided to follow Christ. And every year after camp, we have follow-up ministries and activities, and it's a great opportunity to share the gospel.
And just to give you an idea of some of the impressions and ways that the camp impacts Ukrainian students, we'd like to share a few of the camper comments. So one of them says, "I've learned a lot of things, not only in English, but also in faith. The best for me was that I learned about faith and Jesus."
At the camp, I have learned how to have a relationship with God. I would like to talk to God more about my bad feelings and even my good feelings and the things that happen to me.
"I learned that Jesus loves us. I have new friends, and I saw love and joy from people who barely knew me. It made my heart melt, and I feel love in every cell of my body."
I've learned what it means to follow Jesus and to be friends with him. I've learned a lot of things about God, and I haven't thought of a lot before camp. This camp gave me an opportunity to find out more about God and myself. And after camp, we have follow-up things, follow-up activities. And last year, we had about 75 students that came on their first kickoff English club. This year, we had 85 students, so the room was totally packed. And so we're really excited to see how God's going to be using these students this particular year.
So I continue to serve full-time with our partner organization, International Partnerships. So I get to work with Ukrainian believers and with professionals. So we continue to try to reach the population of professionals in Ukraine with the gospel, believing that when they come to Jesus, they will influence others. Professionals in Kiev want English now more than ever since the war. They're trying to get either a job in an international company so that they get paid in dollars or euro instead of in hryvnia, the national currency, or they're trying to get out of Ukraine, so if they have better English, they have more opportunities that way. Ministry to professionals is a lot different than with university students. It's much slower. It's a long-term building into students' lives and loving them with Jesus' love. A lot of professionals, when they come, they are not open at all to the Bible or to the gospel, but over time, God touches their hearts. One of our students is Dima. You can see I guess, the only guy in that picture. He has very high English, and he's been coming to our classes for about 8 years. He really doesn't need the English portion at all. And last year I asked him, I said, "Dima, why do you keep coming? You know, your English is so good." And he said, "Because this is my English family." So I'm really praying that he will soon also be part of the family of God, not just the family of English. But we love having him. And Vita is another student who's been coming a long time. She's the other one with the name above her head. She was very closed when she first started coming. She was kind of just had a hard look on her face, and she was antagonistic. She clearly repeated that she's an atheist. But over time, God is changing her, and now she asks spiritual questions, and she's open to hearing the answers. she shared with us that in the beginning it was really hard for her to break the stereotype in her mind that believers are backwards and uneducated. But she said, but you and Natasha, my teaching partner, you're educated, and I like hearing you talk about God. Her son Nelson went to one of the English camps this summer. He was finally old enough this year. She'd been asking, can Nelson go? Can Nelson go? And so he went to English camp. So we're also praying for Vita and her family to come to Jesus.
So International Partnerships also reaches out to professionals through photography and cooking. And so my main role is teaching a weekly photography class, assisting traveling photography, and also teaching an occasional cooking class. And so the Bible is used in conjunction with all these different things, all these different classes. And a lot of times the professionals are willing to put up with the Bible to get their felt need of cooking, photography, and travel. And so it's really exciting to rub shoulders with people who might soon be Christians. One of the students, her name is Yana. She has cancer, and she has asked our church to pray for her. And our church has also helped her with the costly expenses of chemotherapy. She is a journalist, and she got to know us because of Wings of Generosity and Care, because she had to document one of our trips to go to the East. And so we have had her in our presence a lot, and she is one of the photography students, and so is her son now. And we have just a great time of fellowship with them.
So there's also a time for travel and a time for guests. So during the last few years, we've had opportunities to travel to 2 of the International Partnerships cities where they have teams and church plants, to Odessa and to Kharkiv. They have English ministry, but they don't have native English speakers, so they like us to come to be bait, because sometimes students will come to something because there's a native speaker there when they might not come when it's a Ukrainian teaching English. So we've enjoyed going and helping these teams.
So in 2016, I taught an English school for professionals in Kharkiv, and there was 25 students there, and 38 of them signed up for the weekly English and Bible class afterwards.
And in April, just this last one, we traveled to Kharkiv together, the same city. Kevin taught more cooking, and I had an English club. And the events were well attended, and there were 2 ladies there who came up to me, and they said, the 2 ladies in this picture, they told me, they said, if Kevin wouldn't have come to English school in 2016, we wouldn't be here. And the one with the red hair, she said, I became a believer soon after, and we just found out that she was just baptized this fall. So we're excited about how God is working in Kharkiv. Another way that God is working there is that this is the couple, the pastor and his wife and their kids. They started recently a ministry called Fusion. It's a ministry to youth where they use music, instrumental and oral music. They have kids, they invite kids to come to learn how to sing and learn how to play instruments, and then they put it on a performance for the parents. And so then parents come, and it's really an exciting ministry. And this summer they had a camp, and 7 of the students trusted in Jesus at that camp. So we're looking forward to seeing how God will continue to grow that ministry there, and maybe in some of the other international partnership cities as well. We've also had a time for guests. So one of the guests that came in 2016 was Vicki Bjornson she used to live in Lebanon. She came for 2 English camps, and then she also taught a grief training seminar to some of the leaders who work in the East. And in addition, she did some one-on-one counseling. One of the ladies that she counseled was Ira. She's one of the young professionals that's a pretty new believer in our church. And after that time, we really saw growth in Ira, and this June, she was just baptized.
And in 2016, we had a hairstylist, David. He lives here in Albany, and he came over. He had a few days spare time in between his shows, and he wanted to give refugees a free haircuts. So we advertised that, and we had a lot of refugees come to get their haircut. And he felt that everyone needs to have a good haircut, even if they can't afford it, and that he was willing to do that. So a lot of people enjoyed their haircuts, and like, oh, I look so good. So he's a professional from Oregon. What do you expect? And then also, we happen to have these people. I mean, you may know them, Mike and Ann Miner. They came to the English camps last year, and they were a very huge blessing to us, because they brought stuff for us. And just emotionally, too, it was great to have a part of Oregon there with us. And I think they're here today. Are they here today? Yeah, okay. Okay, great. So anyway, they will be also leading a camp. Oh, this is a picture to prove that they were actually with us in Kyiv. It's not a Facebook photo. So they're going to be leading the camp next year. And we are very excited that they're going to be coming with a team from SAC. And we're going to have a meeting tonight at 5 o'clock for Q&A. And you guys can get to know more about that project if you are interested.
Also, in 2017, in September, my dad and his wife Judy came to visit us in Kiev. It was really fun to have them there. This was my dad's third trip, so a lot of the people from our church and some of our students already knew him and were looking forward to his visit. People are so surprised that an older couple would travel all the way to Ukraine. And my students still talk about them coming and the impact that it had on them. My dad had open heart surgery, 2 of them actually, in March and a long hospitalization. Many of our church members prayed for him and also some of our students. And I'm just so thankful for how God connects us all in the family of God around the world.
And we've been overseas for a long time, for 20 years, spending Christmases by ourselves with no family. And I was supposed to be a joke, supposed to laugh on that one. Okay. So anyway, this last Christmas we had Parker, our nephew, come spend the Christmas with us. So it was great to have family. And we spoiled him rotten at Christmas time. And so that means if you come at Christmas time, we might spoil you rotten.
There's also been a time for planting and a time for reaping. So a time for planting and building relationships is going on all the time, whether it's with our students, with past students, or with other people in our daily path. This particular last few years, I've had a lot of opportunities to meet with some of my past students. This is Ira, and she loves to get together for coffee or lunch and just visit. She came to our business English classes for a few years, and then she's a professor, and she teaches in English, so she didn't need English classes anymore, but she still comes to our monthly club, and she always asks, "Can I come to your Christmas party?" So when we have the Christmas party, we share about the meaning of Christmas. And when she came for the first time, she had never heard the real story of Christmas, and it impacted her so much. She was waiting for her son to be old enough to understand about Jesus, and so this past Christmas, she shared the story with him on Christmas Eve, and on Christmas morning when they got up, he said, Mommy, is today Jesus' birthday?" And she said, "I couldn't believe that he understood and remembered." And so Ira is not a believer yet, but she's searching. I feel like she's searching for truth, and so I'm praying for Ira and her family to trust in Jesus too.
So Adine, he's the young man in the light blue shirt. He is from Iran. He's a student that we've had attending our English clubs all last year. When he was a teenager, he served in the military, in the Syrian army, and he saw a lot of very bad things, a lot of suffering. And he decided that there was no God, or if there was God, he was a very cruel creature. But he came to our English clubs, even though we have Bible study, and he was always sharing his atheistic views. And on the last day, Brent and I were floored when he said, "I really respect you guys. You have respected me and my opinions, and thank you so much. I've never seen that before, especially in Iran." And so he said, "I want to ask you guys to pray for me because I'm in search of God this year." And so we're really excited to see that he's open to search for God, and we do believe that hopefully he'll become a Christian soon.
So a time for reaping is the season that we all seem to wait for with the most anticipation. And we want to share a couple of stories of reaping. The first one is about Nastya. Nastya started coming to our English class in 2016. And she came with one of our former neighbors who we've known for a long time. Well, the neighbor only stayed for a few lessons, but Nastya continued to come. She didn't miss a lesson unless she was sick. And she asked a lot of questions during the spiritual time. She came to our Easter and Good Friday services for her first church services. And afterwards, she shared with me how helpful it was for her. And she asked me so many questions about faith, about Jesus. And she asked me to pray for her to have wisdom to know who to spend time with. because at that time she was also really involved in yoga and getting to know Eastern religion. And she was trying to find which one was right. And so that same summer, she came to an English camp, and at the English camp, she shared that she had trusted in Jesus. And Nasha has grown so much since that time. She just soaks up the Bible, spiritual instruction. She shares her faith with those around her and just has a real heart to serve God. So we're thankful for Nastya.
And this is Anya. She attended this last July English camp when we showed the Jesus film. The first portion of it, she was very closed. She stopped talking to people. She was very afraid that she's going to be brainwashed. The second day, she was much more animated and very interested in the movie to find out more about Jesus and his life. And by the end of the camp, she accepted Christ. So it's great to see those types of quick changes. Sometimes they are not that quick, but again, this is just one of the stories that God touched her very quickly, and we're excited to see God continuing to work through the students.
So finally, there's a time for training and a time for growth. So the partner organization that we work with, International Partnerships, they have 35 Ukrainian missionaries who are working in 11 post-Soviet regions, both Ukraine and some of the other countries. So we have 2 staff training conferences a year for staff, and then we've just recently started having lay leadership conferences as well, and it's been really exciting to see how God is using the lay leadership conferences to help believers in the church grow. One couple from our church are Kolya and Nadia, and they came to Christ through an English school and English Bible study, and had been coming to our church for quite a while. They went to a lay leadership conference, and after that, they said that they wanted to start a Bible study with refugees, so they lead one of the Bible studies at our church with refugees.
You may remember a story about a Muslim young man who accepted Christ after he saw how Christians would risk their lives to go to the war zone to give food. Well, this is him, and he is a very dedicated Christian, and he has now married one of our colleagues, Dasha, and they had an evangelistic wedding because part of his Muslim family came, and it was interesting to see that. And also, they are both very passionate about spreading the gospel, and they are involved in the prayer ministry, refugee ministry. They just do lots of different things in our church. And you also may remember a story about Dorina. She's a young lady who accepted Christ several years ago. She is very evangelistic as well. She got a new job, and she tells everybody in her office about Jesus all the time. And she invites them to Bible studies. She has Bible studies, and sometimes she wears bright clothes to her office that say, do you got Jesus? Or I love Jesus, how about you? So anyway, she has lots of different shirts like that. So she's a Christian.
So now, in Albany, Oregon, what time is it? Well, we believe it's a time for action. So what is your part in spreading the gospel? What is God asking you to do? Here in Albany, in Africa, in Colombia, in Ukraine, what would God have you to do? We'd like to share with you 3 ways that you can continue to be or to start being involved in the ministry in Ukraine. So one is a time to pray, another is a time to give, and the third is a time to go. So first of all, a time to pray. So please pray for peace in Ukraine. And as Kevin already shared, we have the ribbons on our back table. If you don't already have one, we'd like to challenge you to take one and to pray for peace in Ukraine, both in the country and in people's hearts. And then secondly, we'd like to invite you to join our daily prayer partner team if you're not already a part of that. There are a lot of you who started with us when we started a daily prayer partner team in 2005, and others who have joined throughout the years. And we can't thank you enough. We see how God answers your prayers. And this time we feel like God is challenging us to have 500 daily prayer partners. We need 80 more, because I saw that about 5 people signed up after the last service. So maybe you're part of that 80, if you're not already. With Daily Prayer Partners, we send out weekly emails with specific requests for each day of the week when we're on the field. And so if you want to be part of it, just sign your name on the sheet in the back and your email address, and we'll start sending you those emails.
And also a time to give. So we have a prayer card in the back if you want to give financially. Monthly one-time gifts, all is acceptable. And also, if you want to support this young family too, They're amongst you all the time.
And it's Mike and Ann on there if you
Yeah,
can't see the card
so-
from where you're sitting.
It's a beautiful, handsome family right there.
And they're beautiful kids.
Ann's prettier than he is, but you know how
Well,
that
yeah,
goes.
of course.
Oh, and time to go. So don't forget that SAC is going to be taking a team to Ukraine next year. And so if you'd like to come and find out more about that, at 5 o'clock tonight, we'll be doing lots of Q&A and letting you know everything.
We hope that we'll get to see some of you in Kiev next summer. So we have one last story to share before we close. I guess we don't have time. Now is the time to end. So thank you very much for your partnership with us in Ukraine.
In the morning when I rise to meet you, in the morning when I lift my eyes, you're the only one I wanna cling to. You're the first thought on my mind. Let our voices rise, all creation cries, singing out an endless hallelujah. From this moment on, join with heaven's song, singing out an endless in the moments where you go unnoticed, in the ordinary day-to-day, countless miracles of life around us, born like arrows to your name. Let our voices rise, all creation cries, singing out an endless hallelujah. From this moment on, join with heaven's song, singing out an endless hallelujah. Can we all stand together? Just sing out. Only a moment to live this life like shooting stars, burning up the night to heaven opens. We arrive in your presence, Lord, in your presence, Lord. Only a moment to live this life like shooting stars, burning up the night to heaven opens, and we arrive. voices rise, all creation cries, singing out an endless hallelujah. From this moment on, join with heaven's song, singing out an endless hallelujah.
May the love of the Father, the tenderness of the Son, and the presence of the Spirit gladden your heart and bring peace to your soul this day and all days. Amen. Thank you for being with us. God bless. Have a good week.